Coming up on Network Africa. Heavy fighting in Democratic Republic of Congo, where aid plane is expected. "14 dead, 54 rescued off Tunisia's east coast in migrant boat sinking." Plus, Ethiopia region denies supporting Somalia clashes. Hello and welcome to Network Africa on Channels Television. I'm Anne Nwawodo. Thanks a lot for joining us. And we begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where fighting raged this morning between the army and the M23 rebels in the eastern region, less than 30 kilometers off the major city in Goma. An emergency European aid plane is expected to arrive there later today. The aircraft is the first to be chartered as part of a civilian humanitarian airlift, which was announced on Saturday by the European Union to help people affected by the fighting. Goma is the capital of North Kivu, a province in which the M23 rebels had conquered vast swaths of territories since last year. And most of the city's land supply routes were cut off, and Goma is caught between Rwanda to the east, Lake Kivu to the south, and the rebels to the north and the west. The UN peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo, MONUSCO, has reported that suspected allied democratic forces killed at least 38 civilians, injured 10 of them, and abducted several others in 2 separate attacks in the North Kivu province. UN Deputy Spokesperson Faharan Haq addressed reporters in New York on this issue.
Joint operations by the Congo. Our peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, MONUSCO, reported that suspected allied democratic forces killed at least 38 civilians, injured 10, and abducted several others. This happened in 2 separate attacks in Mukondi and Mausa, located some 20 kilometers south of Beni in the North Kivu province. Joint operations by the Congolese and the Ugandan armed forces are ongoing in this area. Our colleagues at the peacekeeping mission condemn in the strongest terms the brutal attacks against civilians and call for an immediate cessation of hostilities.
14 people died and 54 were rescued during the week when 2 boats sank off the coast of Tunisia. The National Guard reports the migrants were from sub-Saharan Africa without disclosing their nationalities. People fleeing conflict or poverty take boats from Tunisian shores towards Europe, even though the central Mediterranean is the most dangerous migration route, and that's according to the International Organization for Migration. And joining us now is VOA correspondent Juma Majanga. He joins us virtually from Nairobi in Kenya. Thank you very much for joining us on Network Africa, Juma.
Thank you for having me.
Can you give us an update on this story and why Tunisia is famous for these crossings?
Well, an update like you mentioned is the latest incident where tragically 14 lives have been lost, essentially of immigrants. From the sub-Saharan Africa. Luckily, you could say more than 50 were saved. Tunisia, when you look at Tunisia, this incident is not an isolated one. The Tunisian coastline is a major departure point for people fleeing poverty and conflict in Africa, like you mentioned, to seek a better life in Europe, essentially.
All right, so how are migrants who are caught up typically treated when this happens?
Treatment largely depends on the country in which they are caught. There's been a debate really over the treatment of migrants that they're not being treated well, especially in Europe when they are caught there. But what happens most of the time is that these migrants, they get deported back to where they come from, essentially returning them to the problems that they were trying to run away from.
But can any of these migrants be allowed to put up a case, for example, if they survive these crossings? Can they be allowed to put up a case and even be allowed to stay if this case is convincing enough for authorities?
Like you mentioned, they first of all have to make the crossing. This is a very dangerous route. This is a very dangerous journey that they undertake, but they take it out of desperation. These are people who are running from poverty. These are people who are running to seek a better life. So essentially, they are very vulnerable when they reach there. There are people who you would not expect really to defend themselves or put up a case related to negotiate their way. So unless something is done, really, somebody takes up their case and put it up there, there's been a lot of debate, but this will not depend on the migrants themselves. Something needs to be done so that their case is addressed, because these are very vulnerable people who cannot really put up a case for themselves.
But let's say the truth. I mean, these crossings are dangerous, truly, and they don't even seem to be stopping or slowing down. People are still making that attempt to cross despite all the danger. But how are authorities likely to approach them in the future?
Indeed, like you mentioned rightly, there's no indication that these crossings, however dangerous and however they're not going to even slow down in the near future. There's no indication of that. Now, on the contrary, I think this is just going to increase. When we look at the problem they are running for, when you look at Russia's war on Ukraine, the impacts of COVID on the continent has really exacerbated the already dire problem. And so these cases, in my view, are just going to increase. So there is no indication that also the treatment, how they're being treated, which has largely debated, is going to change overnight. There's no indication that now they're going to be welcome. Countries that they are going to, that when they are caught, they're going to be welcome. I don't think the treatment also is going to change anytime soon. It will take a lot of concerted effort. The UN countries come together really to look at how to address the issue from a broader perspective, really, so that the migrants who make their way really, there is a better way to deal with them and to handle the problem.
All right. Thank you very much. VOA correspondent Juma Majanga in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you for your time on Network Africa.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Belgium has announced it will expand reception capacity to relieve pressure on its migration system as EU ministers debated bringing down rising numbers of arrivals and the overhauling of broken asylum rules ahead of the bloc-wide election next year. Belgium is one of the world's richest countries. It's been unable to provide accommodation to many new arrivals, with reception centers almost full. Hundreds of people have been squatting in places like abandoned buildings and a tent city in the capital, Brussels, which is home to EU institutions. Officials have even said that hosting refugees from Ukraine and increasing migration from Africa and Asia is already straining the country of about 11.6 million people. She spoke on the news conference to announce measures such as adding 2,000 beds for asylum seekers, including a site to be built with refitted containers. Data coming from refugee agency shows that Belgium received more than 36,800 asylum applications just in 2022, and that's more than 40% up from 1 year ago and the highest since 2016. On top of that, there are even more than 60,000 Ukrainian refugees, according to the Belgian statistics. Tunisian President Mr. Kais Saied has dissolved municipal councils months before they were able to be for elections, and that's further dismantling the systems of government developed after the 2011 revolution that brought democracy. The municipal councils will be replaced by special delegations made up of civil servants and placed under the supervision of the governor of each region. According to a statement by Mr. Saied, the new councils will be under new rules that he will rewrite. The mandates of the 350 mayors and municipal councillors currently in place are due to expire at the end of April this year, and elections were theoretically scheduled to follow. But in 2018 local elections, a third of municipal councils came under control in Ennada, an Islamist party that has the most vocal critic of Mr. Said. Ethiopia's Somali regional state has issued a statement denying claims by the self-declared Republic of Somaliland that it had sent troops to support clan militias in restive Las Anod town. It denounced accusations that it termed reckless, adding the Somaliland was seeking to reduce political pressure by pointing fingers at non-existing enemies. It also warned Somaliland officials against remarks and actions that could create hostility between communities in the breakaway region of Somalia and those in the southeastern area in Ethiopia. The statement was issued hours after Somaliland's cabinet asked the Ethiopian regional state to withdraw troops that it said were supporting clan militias fighting against Somaliland forces on the outskirts of Las Anod since the 6th of February. I head to Senegal now, where the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hadjibou Soumaré is in police custody after questioning President Macky Sall about financing a French politician. His lawyer told the media that Mr. Soumaré was summoned by police over his letter to the president about the alleged donation. In that letter, Mr. Soumaré had asked the president whether he had donated 12 million euros, and that's about $12.7 million, to a French political figure whose party is distinguished by hatred and rejection of others. The Senegalese government denied making any financial donation to the leader of France's national rally, Marine Le Pen, who visited Mr. Sall on January the 18th. It rejected and condemned the insinuations, describing them as cowardly and unfounded. Back here in Nigeria, the Lagos State Commissioner for Health, Professor Akin Abayomi, says a total of 102 casualties were recorded yesterday as a result of the train and bus accident in Lagos State. Professor Abayomi says the fatality still stands at 6, while 19 victims have now been discharged from Lasuth, 5 discharged from the State Accident and Emergency Center at Old Tollgate, and 8 of them from Orile Agege General Hospital. He also says that 256 units of voluntary blood was received yesterday from Lagosians, while 40 units of blood have been transferred for the victims today. Professor Akin Abayomi was speaking during a press briefing at the Lagos State University Teaching Hospital, Lasuth.
It's important to note that from about 12 o'clock yesterday till now, we have not lost any further passengers from this accident. So the act of triage was very important in saving lives and reducing the casualty of this ghastly accident. At the same time, there are very few hospitals in the world that can cope with a sudden surge of very critically injured patients. So the triage process also identifies some of the injured passengers that can be transferred to other established general hospitals in Lagos. And what we did was to transfer 25 of the less severely injured to 4 of our general hospital, Bagada General Hospital, Lagos Island General Hospital, the Tollgate Accident and Emergency Center, and the Orile Agege General Hospital. And I went to visit them after I left Lasuth, and all of them are stable, doing fine, and some of them will indeed be discharged later on today. Early this morning, we were able to transfuse 40 units of blood to the victims to stabilize them, those that required blood because they're either going in for surgery or they were bleeding into their brain or their chest or their abdomen. Were able to save their lives with rapid access and availability of safe blood. Discharged 19 passengers from Lasuth, but I am also aware that at the other hospitals where we referred patients to who are moderate to mild injuries, many of them are being prepared for discharge this morning. And the information I have right now is that at Tollgate, accident and emergency, they're about to discharge 5, in addition to the 19 that we discharged here. And also at Orile Agege, where we sent 10 passengers, we're about to discharge 8.
Meanwhile, the Chief Medical Director of LASUTH, Professor Adetokunbo Fabanwo, has reacted to news making the rounds on social media that the patients were not well taken care of is totally false. Professor Fabanwo says the center created yesterday is an emergency standard used to cater for a large number of accident victims, which is the practice worldwide.
By 4 p.m., we had finished the triaging. We had moved some patients to other different hospitals in Lagos State, general hospitals. We had taken some to the theater for operation. We had moved some to intensive care unit. Some had gone for various investigations like x-rays and scans. Okay, so by 4 p.m., we had finished triaging. And the whole place was empty. All patients had been sorted out, only for us to see ignorant comments by certain people concerning the way we triage. And I'd like to seize the opportunity to say that we triaged in compliance with international best practice. When you have huge numbers of casualties, there is no way that you can have vacant or empty emergency bed spaces to put them. So the whole idea is to put them in an open space so that you can clearly see the injuries that they have. Health workers who are numbering over 100 will be able to move around freely to be able to ascertain the kind of injuries they were dealing with. That is the principle of triaging. So this nonsensical talk about treating people on the floor should stop. People should stop criticizing us about that. That is the way it's normally done. And we were able to achieve our objectives. We moved patients to theater, we moved them to ICU, we did suturing on lacerations, we put POPs on fractures. Some patients were moved to other general hospitals. By 4 p.m., we were done.
Welcome back. Marie Zeza is one of many DRC residents who have lost hope in leaving a displaced people's camp and returning to a village in the eastern Congolese province of Ituri. Ituri is one of the provinces where rebel violence is surging, while regional attention focuses on a conflict in a neighboring territory.
5 years ago, Zedza lost both her hands in a machete attack during a raid by members of the Codeco group, one of several militias that have destabilized the densely forested province in Democratic Republic of Congo and forced 1.5 million people to flee their homes since late 2017.
We miss our lives before. You can see that I don't have my 2 arms. I can't do anything without assistance. I hate my life here. People in the position of disability in which I am are not taken into account. That's why I'm begging the Congolese government to do something for the return of peace, so that I can go home.
The prospects are not good. Attacks have increased significantly in recent months, with 419 civilians killed between December 1, 2022 and mid-February 2023, according to internal United Nations data, even as a major offensive by a different rebel group has drawn some Congolese forces away to North Kivu province to the south.
What we are seeing is an upsurge of violence, with attacks and reprisals between Codeco and the Zaire militants. They have broken their unilateral commitment. We hope, despite everything, to continue to work with these groups to try, between now and the next consultations of the Nairobi 4 talks, to get them to come to their senses and understand that they must stop the violence against the population.
Malgré tout, il faut continuer à travailler avec
On an official visit to Ituri on March the 1st, her first in several months, Bintu Keita, the special representative of the Secretary General of the United Nations, as well as local authorities, blamed Codeco and a rival militia called Zaire for the spiraling of bloodshed and reprisal attacks. The groups, which operate in remote areas and do not have official spokespeople, could not be reached for comment. In January, mass graves containing 49 bodies, including those of women and children, were discovered in 2 villages in Ituri, killings attributed by the United Nations to Codeco. International aid groups have warned that the insecurity has made it harder to deliver aid to those who were able to escape such attacks, worsening the humanitarian crisis. In mid-January, the United Nations Aid Agency, the OCHA, said 12 humanitarian organizations had been forced to limit their operations in parts of Ituri because of increased attacks since the start of 2023. Nevertheless, the steep security deterioration in Ituri has been overshadowed by the recent turbulence in North Kivu.
On September 10th last year, Gambia's medicines regulator sent a statement to pharmacies suspending syrup sales following a series of suspicious deaths. The syrups, which were contaminated with ethylene glycol and diethylene glycol, were connected to deaths of scores of children under 2 years old.
Abrima Saidi walked into his local pharmacy to buy fever-reducing medicine for one of his 3-year-old twins, Adama. Saidi gave Adama the syrup before going to bed at night. The next morning, September 11, her fever had spiked and he gave her another dose. Her parents took her to a local hospital in Serukunda, where she became drowsy and unresponsive. The pharmacist also learned of the ban on paracetamol syrup sales after a friend sent him a text message days later. On September 16th, doctors told Saidi that Adama's condition had become critical and she was referred to Banjul. On September 19th, 9 days after Adama took the medicine, she closed her eyes one last time. Every morning before school, Adama's twin, Hawa, asks her parents where Adama is. They tell her Adama has gone to another world to study the Quran. A few weeks later, on October 5th, the deaths of more than 70 Gambian children from acute kidney injury were linked by global health officials to cough syrups made in India and contaminated with ethylene glycol and diethylene glycol. The patients were the first of 300 children killed worldwide last year by contaminated cough syrups. Not all of them made in India. It was the deadliest total poisoning on record from toxins that have been known to scientists for decades. Binta Sasay administered the medicine to her children.
When they take this syrup, they have diarrhea and they are vomiting and the bodies are warm. Yes, so they cannot eat, they cannot urine. So when I saw that time I go to the hospital. So when I go to the hospital, they give them the medicine and fix the catheter. But before that, the 2 passed away. So when that 2 passed away, I left only 1. So that one is what they fix catheter. So when they fix the catheter with him, the boy cannot do anything.
Cherno Jalo, a pediatric surgeon at the Banjul Teaching Hospital in Gambia's capital, said his staff had been traumatized by the sheer volume of fatalities.
Practicing here as the older pediatric surgeon, I have never seen anything like this. We've been having mortalities, but not this number. This is the first time they have seen anything like this. As I said earlier, and then I think all the staff involved in this management need to have some form of psychological or psychiatric treatment for the impact.
Pharmaceutical experts have warned for years about lax oversight of drugs made in India, whose industry supplies half of the medicines used in Africa. India says it found no fault with the medicines. But Gambia, one of Africa's smallest and poorest countries, has no pharma industry, no means of testing imported drugs, and just over 24 pharmacists registered for 2.5 million people. India closed the factory that made the drugs in October. Government inspectors found their manufacturer, Leading Pharmaceuticals Limited, had violated rules across its manufacturing and testing activities.
A German company has signed a memorandum of understanding for $34 billion green energy project in Mauritania. Egyptian and Emirati firms are also part of that deal, which will see the facility produce up to 8 million tons of green hydrogen and other hydrogen-based products annually in Mauritania. The first phase is due to be completed in the next 5 years. Germany is involved with a number of clean energy projects in Africa as it moves away from dependency on fuel imports from Russia and tries to meet climate targets. Green hydrogen is produced using renewable energy sources like wind and solar power. And that's Network Africa for today. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful weekend. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Let's stay safe.